Hey, hello everyone. Hope everyone is doing fine this Sunday evening or Monday morning, wherever you might be. Thanks for joining me once again. Uh, Quick shout out, Seymour Rivers. How you doing? I'm looking forward to tonight's episode of 70s Stagflation Reborn in 2020. Yeah, when I was looking for a topic, I mean, of course, stagflation seems to be on everybody's mind still. And so I went in and took a look back at what had happened in the 70s. And I tell you what, it's the same players, same things, just the names have changed. So I think nothing new under the sun, guys. Richard Martin, how you doing? James Richter, how you doing? Joe Cantu, how you doing? Hello from Texas. Howdy, how you doing? Harold B. Let's see, Pablo Pina, how you doing? Yeah, Disco. I was gonna name it. Disco is not dead, but it's okay. Some guys might not even know what disco is. Let's see what else is out there. JW, how you doing? Ernest Blackmore, how you doing? Dollar cost average or stacking for sure. I think silver went down a bit again today. Dollar cost average. And Patrick Bateman, how you doing? And again, aloha, Richard Martin. So I'll be with you guys shortly. Let's get a few more sips of coffee in there. We're going to take a look at Dave Kranzler's past interview. A few things Gerald Talente had said, few things from Twitter, and then we'll get into the main topic of the day. 70s and 50 years later, here we are. Same things, nothing new under the sun. I'll be with you guys in about 20 seconds or so. Thanks again. Oh, yeah, five, five. Thanks, Harold. Appreciate it. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira, and this is our weekly live stream. Glad you could make it here. Again, whether it's night for you or early morning for you here in Asia, thanks again for joining. Really do appreciate it. As always, you can find us on social media. You can find us at our website, silverbullion.com.sg, where yes, we do sell gold and silver. We store precious metals as well. And more than anything else, we do specialize in systemic wealth protection. And as I always say, you guys are smart. You know what's going on out there, or you're starting to get a feel for what's going on out there. Shoot us an email, sales@silverbullion.com.sg, and we can go over what we can do for you, or if it fits for what you have in mind with what you want to do. Silver Bullion SG is where you can find us on Facebook. Silver Bullion PL for private limited is where you can find us on Twitter. Silver Bullion SG, Instagram. And if you want the audio only versions, bit.ly/SBTV iTunes or/SBTV Spotify, again, for just the audio only versions. And Crisis Tracker. Again, if you have that Telegram app, it's a free app. Go ahead and search t.me/crisis tracker. One word, crisis tracker. This is where Vincent and I will go ahead and we'll post things as we find them as they pertain to gold, silver, finance, economics, things like that. Sometimes politics, hard to avoid politics in anything these days, but we try to walk a fine line with that. Everyone has a different opinion. But again, t.me/crisis tracker, one word. Hope that you'll join up and we'll go ahead and find some news articles that are important to you. So again, aloha one and all. Thanks for being here. Let me take a quick look again. Bill Wood, how you doing? Rod Panhard, how you doing again? Truth Monster, how you doing? Okay, 495. Mr. Nguyen, how you doing? So again, as always, hello and welcome everyone. Aloha all. Upcoming guest, I think you guys may have heard of him. Some guy named Peter Schiff. Just kidding there. Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff. Always glad to have Peter Schiff. He's going to be joining us next week. Chief economist and global strategist at Euro Pacific Capital. He's one of the few widely known economists and investment professionals to have warned about the financial crisis before it began back in 2008. And he is warning us. He's warning us once again. He's been telling us about it for a while. So make sure you join us. Hit that bell, subscribe, and thumbs up are always appreciated. So again, thank you one and all for being here. And as part of that, we'd like to give some of you a special gift, 5 of you perhaps. We're going to be offering up to $10 Amazon gift cards for our winners. The winners are going to come from the Dave Kranzler interview. I'm going to ask a question from that interview. And if you'd like to be one of those winnerviews, be one of the first 5 to correctly answer the question in this live stream, you're going to have about a minute and 30 seconds. US winners, you're going to be given a link to go ahead and download that gift card. Non-US winners, excuse me, you may have to get with Amazon, and they'll go ahead and let you know how they can arrange some type of a different option for you. And you're going to have to provide us an email during this live stream. And no need for other comments, I guess, in the email. Sometimes it gets a little bit messed up, but just go ahead and provide us an email. And my colleague Vincent is here, and he will go ahead and make sure we get those 5 winners, and we'll be sending out the gift card after the live stream. So again, hope you all are ready. It's going to come from the Dave Kranzler interview. Here we go. U.S. Treasury paper is considered to be blank free. This coming from Dave Kranzler. U.S. Treasury paper is considered to be blank free. So go ahead and take a shot. You never know. You never know. You just might get it. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I saw that Megan Kelly, she spoke to Peter Schiff as well. That was pretty interesting. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a look, see what these answers are coming in. Let's see. Truth Monster is saying risk. Richard Martin is saying risk. Let's see what else is out there. Hang on. Let's see. Richard Martin, risk. Seymour Rivers, risk. Rod Panhard, risk. 495, risk. Okay. I guess, you know what, we'll end it there. I mean, the answer is risk, but I'll just go ahead and see what else is out there. Interest, logic, risk, poop. Okay, well, all right. Non-debt, risk, 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 risk. Worthless. Worthless sounds good. Sugar. Gold free. Diet inflated. Okay. Well, I tell you what, we'll just go to the answer, which was risk. Okay, the answer was risk. And the winners to it were Truth Monster. He got it with risk. And then we had Richard Martin with risk, and Seymour Rivers with risk. Rod Panhard also said risk. And then 49 Fine also said risk. So those are going to be our winners: Truth Monster, Richard Martin, Seymour Rivers, Rod Panhard, and 49 Fine. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll revisit that Dave Kranzler interview just to make sure he did say risk, and just to make sure that we do have the correct 5 people.
The reason why the U.S. Treasury paper has been considered the risk-free standard is because it's impossible for the U.S. to default as long as it has the ability to print money unfettered and with no checks and balances. Compare that to the ECB. In order for the ECB to print money so that each of its sovereign members can continue making their debt payments, you have to have an agreement by every party. Italy can't just go out and print euros in order to fund its sovereign debt. But the U.S. has been printing dollars to fund its sovereign debt since 2008.
Okay, let me do one more little quick bit of housekeeping here. Again, someone had asked, so that is t.me/crisis tracker. That's the handle where you can find us on Telegram. Again, where Vincent and I, we go ahead and we post in news, financial news, gold, silver news. Pretty interesting stuff at times. So, okay, Dave Kranzler, it's impossible for the US to default. What's your take on that? It's impossible for the US to default. As long as the US has the ability to print money untethered with no checks and balances, the US cannot default. What's your take on that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, monetarily wise, maybe because they have the printer, but maybe they're defaulting in people's trust. I think, I think broad default can be defined a little bit more broadly these days. So interesting what Dave Kranzler said there. I'd like to see your take on it. I'll look for it, and I'll play another clip from Dave Kranzler.
If you don't want to worry about the volatility in the price of gold or silver, and you know, based on all your homework that you've done, that gold and silver are going to move higher in price, then just buy physical gold and safekeep it yourself. And you're not buying physical gold and silver as a speculative investment. I mean, you can have, some small amount of speculation, especially now because gold and silver are so underpriced relative to every other financial asset. You're buying physical gold and silver as an insurance policy. And an insurance policy that, God forbid, hopefully we'll never need. But unfortunately, I think we are going to need it. And when you do have it, it's like house insurance. You don't need house insurance until your house catches on fire. So you say, I'm just going to ride the wave and not buy homeowners insurance. I don't have a mortgage, so I don't have a bank forcing me to do it. And then all of a sudden your house catches on fire. Well, no one's going to sell you that insurance. And that's what we're going to eventually see in the physical gold and silver market. Gold has been the number one performing asset class since 2001 through now.
Okay, Dave Kranzler, gold and silver are insurance. I mean, for those of us who have been in it for a while, who have known about it for a while, we've always seen it as an investment, and somewhere along the way, it's kind of became investment slash insurance. So if you are starting to hear about gold and silver as a wealth protection store of value, it's because it's starting to shade over into the insurance end as well. And a lot of us, we do see it and understand it. So good for you if you do buy physical gold. Precious metals are underpriced. Gold, number one performing asset class from 2001 until now. No one wants or wishes the worst, but gold and silver are insurance. Like house insurance, you don't need it until it catches on fire, but by then it's too late. So these are some things that Dave Kranzler had to say. What's your take on it? I'll be looking for your thoughts out there as well. Before we move on, I just want to add this in here. These are the winners. Just to make sure we get it all. Hang on, let me put it up there. Okay, it's not showing up. Okay, don't know why. Truth Monster, Richard Martin, Seymour Rivers, Rod Panhard, 495. Congrats on winning the quiz. Please email us. Please email us. Okay, let me move this on. Please email us at silverbullion.com.sg if this is the first time that you've won. So again, if your name is there, go ahead and email us SBTV at silverbullion.com.sg, and we can go ahead and get you that gift card after this live stream. Okay, so moving on, one more clip, last clip from Dave Kranzler.
The Fed is by far the largest holder of 10-year treasuries. And just the very act of a central bank buying the risk-free bonds issued by the sovereign entity tells you that, and especially for the Fed, because pretty much everything in the rest of the world kind of prices off of the U.S. Treasury market, the U.S. Treasury curve, or LIBOR, of course. So just by the fact that they've been buying about $5 trillion worth of treasuries, something like that, $6 trillion, around there. Forget what the exact numbers are. It's a lot. And just by buying those, you're trying to control the level of interest rates all along the Treasury curve. So when they start saying yield curve control, to me, that's a signal that, hey, we're going to have to print more money. And that conversation started a couple years ago, before the market dislocation that we had in 2020. And so to me, it was the Fed's way of kind of signaling, hey, more QE's coming.
All right. Fed, largest holder of 10-year treasuries. And I tell you what, we're going to take a look at that 10-year treasury in our weekly inflation slash treasury yield chart. We're going to see where it's at. Fed trying to control interest rates all along the treasury curve. We're going to take a visual look at that as well. Yield curve control means we are going to have to print more money. More QE is coming. Now, what's your thoughts on this? I mean, do you think we're going to pivot to QE? Do you think the Fed's just going to throw in the towel, give it up, and then we're going to switch over to that CBDC or that Fed coin, whatever it's going to be? What's your thoughts on this? Are we going to rebound, or are we going to stay on this path and get into a new type of monetary system, a newer dollar? So curious to know what's your thoughts on this. So moving forward, Gerald Salente's Trends Journal, his weekly message, And two articles: consumer confidence is falling and banks tighten. Remember, we talked about banks tightening the other week with Judy Shelton, mentioning how banks are making it more difficult to lend by design because they can park it with the Fed and get more interest interest on their money with less risk or less chances of defaulting, because the Fed's not going to default. You and I, we may default, so the banks are finding it better just to tighten up and park the money at the Fed instead of lending it out. Gerald's weekly message: economy is going down and inflation is going up, which means we are experiencing dragflation, is what he calls it, dragflation. But don't expect to hear that from the mainstream media because they're still Googling what it means to be in recession and only repeat the line that we are moving into stagflation. Okay, I'm saying stagflation as well. But no, the economy won't stagnate, it'll drag down as inflation keeps rising. The same people who said inflation is not a problem are the same ones spreading the propaganda that the US is not in a recession. Chief among them is Janet Yellen, the US Treasury Secretary, who had claimed that inflation was just temporary and then transitory. Now she's saying this is not an economy in recession. We are in a period of transition in which growth is slowing, and that's necessary and appropriate. And we need to be growing at a steady and sustainable pace. As we detail in this previous Trends Journal, we have entered the worst financial and geopolitical crisis that we have ever experienced in modern times. And House Speaker Pelosi, you folks know about this one. Her trip to Taiwan added to market jitters and ramped up tensions between Beijing and Washington. And we note in this week's issue that the peace continues to be a banned word in the media. The US announced more money going to ammunition in Ukraine with the hopes of blowing up more people from country R and fanning the flames of World War III. Any talk of peaceful revolution is prohibited. Peace is dead in the US because our politicians are mentally ill and reporters who cover them are nothing more than, you can see that word there, media, and you can also see that word, who get paid out by their corporate pimps and government masters. All right, you can read between the lines there. Consumer confidence falling. Consumer confidence fell in July for the third consecutive month, according to the Conference Board, an international nonprofit consortium of corporations. Consumers' outlook fell to a rating of 95.7 last month from 98.4 in June and dropped below economists' expectations of 97.2, frightened with concerns about rising food and fuel prices in particular. Buyers are now less likely to buy cars, homes, and major appliances in the near future, due largely to the combination of rising prices and higher interest rates, the survey found. And consumers also had a gloomier view of the current business conditions and the outlook for job growth in June. One more article here: banks tighten. Banks are lending less, setting more stringent borrowing criteria and charging higher interest on purchases of hotels, office buildings, shopping malls, and other commercial properties. This was reported by the Wall Street Journal. The stricter requirements reflect not only the recent rise in interest rates, but also the wobbly market in commercial properties and what many see as the growing risk of a recession, which would likely increase the number of loans to go bad. In this year's second quarter, banks issued 20.6 billion in securities backed by commercial mortgage loans, almost a third less than the 29 billion they lent in the first 3 months of this year, according to research service TREP. Now, in June, banks issued only 3.6 billion in collateralized loan obligations. You folks remember that word, CLOs? Collateralized loan obligations, which are securities backed by short-term loans to developers. Now, in contrast, in February, banks issued 8.9 billion worth. Collateralized loan obligations are seen as somewhat riskier than other kinds of property loans. Remember that word. We talked about it, I think about a year and a half ago or so, when we saw the Fed supporting zombie companies, pumping up corporations, throwing money at them, throwing loans at them. And we had talked about this can get pretty dicey because all of these loans, uh, they are going to have to be paid, and now we're heading into a recession. So many who followed that 2008 financial crisis closely know about CDO, collateralized debt obligations, and they were a major reason for triggering the financial crisis back in 2008. And there's another similar term, the CLO, collateralized loan obligations. And many people, we of course we do get confused between them if we even know about them. But both CLO and CDO are similar types of debt instruments. They are, but at the same time, very different from each other. The primary difference between that CLO today and that CDO back in 2008 is with the underlying assets or securities backing them. CLO uses corporate loans, okay, and that CDO back in 2008, they used mortgages. They used mortgages that were pretty much backing them. So we can say a CLO is a loan fund. It's a loan fund that investors, their money, they use to buy business loans. In simple words, we can say that a CLO manager purchases the corporate loan made by financial institutions, and these loans are largely to the companies that have a lower than investment grade rating of BB plus or lower. So again, 2008, they were buying up these mortgage-backed securities, and today they're buying up these corporate loans. So it's the same game, it's just a different name, same name. So, okay, we'll take a look at that inflation treasury yield chart. So before that, let me go ahead and touch base, see what's going on there. Carrie Ellen Wilder, how are you doing? Okay, let me see. This John Bethea, thanks for sharing. Uh, I was 24 in 1970. Gas was very hard to get. Jobs were hard to get for many, and inflation was high. I believe in the near future it'll be worse this time. Loan rates were high if you could get one. John, thanks for sharing that. I'll let you guys know I do remember it as well. I was a kid back in the 70s. My wife will say I'm still a kid in the 2020s, but I remember that. I remember the what we saw, what we went through. Uh, especially with fuel, that was pretty rough. Even the home, things in the home were pretty rough because of inflation and just wasn't enough money to get by. I remember those times as well. Thanks for sharing. If you got stories, go ahead and share it. I'll pull them up as we go along. Okay, so let's check that inflation treasury yield chart, see where we are today. So again, CPI is consumer price index. That's that red line above. And the yield curve shows the duration and interest rate of bonds, which is that green line. Up and to the right, things are good. Flat, things are kind of failing. And when you have that inverted yield curve, definitely a recession usually is on the way. So we can see January, February, we still had that up and to the right. In March, we can see it starting to flatten in the middle. You can see it flattening already in the middle. Moving into April, we see the yields, all yields starting to rise, starting to flatten again in the middle. June, same thing, gets a little bit bumpy, had that big bump there. July, it's all basically flattening out, and it's, you know, not looking good. So that was July. Actually, we're into August. I need to change the date on that, but clearly you can see come August, there is definitely an inversion going on. And I want you to take a look at the 10-year, which is the third from the right, that 10-year, 2.83, and start heading on over to the left. 7-year is above the 10-year. 5-year, the 3-year, the 2-year, the 1-year, even the 6-month are all above that 10-year benchmark rate. So you can see that definitely that inversion is going on. And take note of the 20-year, 3.27, and the 1-year, 3.29. So we are seeing it starting to stretch out across all yields. So keep that in mind. So that's gonna wrap up that front half. We'll go over to our website, silverbullion.com.sg. Take a look at what's going on there. So quick, let me refresh this a bit. See where we are with gold and silver. Silver 1992, it broke under that $20 level again. Gold at 1775. Kind of, I mean, really no change between gold anyway, but silver, it's a bit more volatile, and I know a lot of folks have a lot of silver out there, so any movement in silver really really matters. And platinum 936. So remember, platinum was above gold before, or platinum was a higher price than gold, and now it's just a little bit more than half the price of gold. So keep an eye on platinum for sure. Again, as always, if you do speak a different language, go ahead and click on here, and we'll go ahead and talk to you via email in a different language. So, go ahead and contact us, whatever your native language may be. Maybe someone on staff can go ahead and communicate with you. So that's a good thing, right? And silver to gold ratio 89.1. I think it was at 92 the other week, and then it went back down to 86, and now we see it back up at 89. So it is getting a bit volatile. Silver's having a bit of a hard time keeping up with gold, but it's okay. It means cost averaging, right? It's a good time to do that. This chart, what it's saying is 89 ounces of silver equals 1 ounces of gold, and it definitely means silver is undervalued. And if you're looking to buy precious metals, but you don't know which to buy between gold and silver, this chart is pointing you in the direction of silver. So it is a good time to buy silver. And moving on, some of the featured products here. And okay, so what I want to do is just take a quick look at what we got going on, the promos for you folks over here in Singapore. Canadian maples, these are on promo right now. We do have some in the shop. You can go ahead and pick it up. For you folks storing in the vault, you can go ahead and purchase them and store them as well. So these are a pretty good deal with the maples. One more announcement. Monday, well, from today on, sorry about that. Our hours changed. We're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And tomorrow, it is Singapore's National Day. So happy birthday, Singapore. I know Vincent is smiling. Vincent's smiling. It's his country's National Day. So wish one and all the best in Singapore with that. So these are some of the products on sale. Gold bars. Let me see. Okay. So what you can do is, if you are storing with us, just go ahead and click on store and vault. What'll happen is, of course, you have to be sign up as a silver bullion user. You need to already have, in some cases, an account with us. You can go ahead and just stick it directly in your storage and you own it. If you're not, and you would like to store with us, or at least have that option of being able to store overseas, go ahead and perhaps the easiest one is personal account. We do have 6 types: personal, joint, trust, joint account with the minor, business account, an IRA account, precious metals IRA type of an account. If you are thinking about that, go ahead and contact us again, and we'll work you through it. We'll walk you through it and work with you on opening up that precious metals account. I think this one here is going to be more and more important as we go on. But just to give you an example, personal account, basic information, just your name, some type of an ID, what currency you would like to use, and then just sending that application to us. It's a very simple process to open up. And if you do, we would greatly appreciate that when you click on references. We're all the way at the bottom, but we're there. YouTube, SBTV, that helps us out a lot. So we do have a lot to offer, including peer-to-peer loans, where you can use your gold and silver in storage as collateral to take out a loan. Key point, you still own it. You still do own your gold and silver. So moving on over to Twitter, few things I bookmarked. Uh, Truth is a liability. Narrative truths a liability. It seems that's where we're going. This was a comment I made to David Morgan after he posted, "The truth doesn't mind being questioned. A lie does." I'm sad to say we're seeing more and more of this. Global realignment continues. Turkey agrees to pay for Russian gas. Russian gas, ran out of gas. Russian gas with rubles. So again, this global realignment still continuing. And why? Because people need to align themselves with commodities, the real things. This is what we're seeing here. Okay. Unusual wells. Americans opened up 233 million new credit card accounts in the April-June period, the most since 2008. The most since 2008. Here we go. Metaverse. Maybe you bought that metaverse home next to Snoop Doggy Dogg, as a few people actually did, but starting to go down. Metaverse real estate starting to collapse. So even if the land is virtual, that pain is real. This coming from Alt. It's a nice post there. Argentina economic minister being hunted down as the current rate of inflation in Argentina is now over 60%. This is happening. This is happening all over the world. You'd be surprised how many countries it's going on in. Just too many to report and get correct. Rob Schneider, yes, he was talking. He threw up this clip about Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman said inflation is not basically inflation is caused by governments. That's what he said. Milton Friedman, world renowned economist, he was saying inflation is caused by Washington and excess money printing. I would play it, but these copyright guys at YouTube, right? They're always kind of hounding everybody. Steve Hanke, talking about now Laos in Southeast Asia takes the sixth spot in this week's inflation roundup. Let's take a quick look at this. This is pretty interesting here. So number one, Zimbabwe. Uh, Steve Hanke, he measures the inflation rate, and he has Zimbabwe at 595%. He has Turkey at 131%, Sri Lanka 115%, Cuba 94%, Argentina 75% is where he has it at. Um, all over, up and down. Coming in at number 18, this is as far as it went up to, was Egypt at 33%. So you can see up and down this: Iran, Sudan, Syria, Sierra Leone, Pakistan, Malawi, Nigeria, Ghana, Ukraine, Venezuela, Lebanon. Countries all over the world, they are hitting this inflation brick wall pretty hard. So keep this in mind as we move forward. A lot of these things just simply aren't being reported. Lynette Zhang, so she's also bringing up Turkey's deepening ties with Russia. Um, could it mean, another war? Well, I mean, war is bound to happen at some point, but this is definitely the moving of the chess pieces on the board. That is without question. Again, Turkish banks are now adopting Russian payments systems. And this was the thing, because a lot of people had always said the dollar's going to collapse, the dollar's going to collapse. Well, the thing is, dollar didn't really need to collapse. All that was needed was a different payment system. And that way you could go around using the US dollar. And this is what is happening right now. So they're going to use a Russian payments system to get around the US dollar. So interesting here. Egon von Greyers. Powell knows that Uncle Sam cannot afford rising rates or a perpetually strong USD. So why the public roost to fight 9% inflation with 2.5% federal funds rate? The answer is simple, guys. The Fed does see a recession, even though they're not saying it, coming, and needs to raise rates today so they'll have anything to cut tomorrow. This is something we've talked about as well. They just need to raise rates so they can pull back. It's again, it's another game that they're playing that really they've kicked that can down the road. They're in a dead end right now. There's not many places they can go. Bangladesh, again, petrol prices increasing by 51% and diesel 42%. And these things happen in days or hours. So again, things are not steady there. China halts dialogue with U.S. on military climate over Pelosi Taiwan trip. A lot of opinions on this one, both this way and that way, and it's interesting to see, how people kind of view this. And chips are not yet on the menu for the strategists. A lot of it they say has to do with chips. And let me just round it off by saying Ted Cruz reconciliation bill would fund 87,000 IRS agents. These IRS agents won't go after the billionaires. They will audit everyday Americans. And I've traveled all across Texas and the US. I've never once heard anyone say we need more IRS agents. So that's a look at Twitter. The interesting thing with that one, with what Ted Cruz says, funding 87,000 IRS agents, we just defunded the police a few years back. So the police got defunded, and then the IRS, they get funded. So kind of makes you wonder. They were policing people. They pulled back on that, and now they're gonna police your finances and make sure you're giving your money to Uncle Sam. So I don't know. That one it's a bit weird for me when I take a look at it. So now 87,000 IRS agents are going to be funded to go after Ted Cruz says to go after you and me, but hey, we can defund the police, but we'll fund the IRS. Strange world indeed. We take a look at these comments here. Um, let's see. Let's see. Uh, yeah, Carrie Ellen, I appreciate that. This was the other live stream where we talked about Dr. Go King Sweep. Um, he foresaw a lot of the ills that could happen with central banks, and he tried to do his best to make sure that these things, would be very difficult to happen, and he did a great job. Back then, there was this thing called the currency board system, and what happened was central banks did not have the power to print money. They could do just about everything else, but as far as printing money, there was a currency board system that actually went and decided on that. So he had a his way was the right way. And I hear even Sri Lanka now is talking about a currency board system. So here we go again, right? Nothing new under the sun. We just got to make the commitment to do things right. That's really what it comes down to: integrity and doing things right. All right, so let's see what else is out there. Henry, IRS buying ammo. Okay. Let's see, John Bethea, again, great comment. We older folks know how much that the government has wasted for many years now. So sorry for our kids, and that's going to be part of what we're taking a look at in the main topic, what we saw in the 70s and where we're heading to today. So with that, excuse me, I'll head on over to the topic of the day: stagflation, revisiting the stagflation of the 70s and how it's turning out some 50 years later. So again, a lot of us, or some of us anyway, we may remember the 70s. I do. It was a tough time. Very, very tough time. I'm sure you folks would probably agree with that. Okay. So in the early 1970s, the post-World War II economic boom began to wane due to increased international competition, the expense of the Vietnam War, and the decline of manufacturing jobs. So already we're starting to see some similarities here. So unemployment rates rose, while a combination of price increases and wage stagnation led to a period of economic doldrums known as stagflation. President Nixon at that time tried to alleviate these problems by devaluing the dollar and declaring wage and price freezes or price controls. Some of us may remember that as well. And we're kind of seeing these price controls again where governments, for now anyway, they are subsidizing. Okay, so keep an eye on these types of things again. Now, the crisis was compounded when oil rich nations, let's just say energy rich nations in the Middle East, declared an embargo against the United States in retaliation for its support of Israel. Again, this was back in the 70s. The oil embargo had a lasting effect on energy prices. Now, this is something I think a lot of us, yeah, we do remember. Now, during the 25 years after World War II, the economic power of the United States was unparalleled. Observers, they commented that the post-war United States was in the midst of the greatest prosperity the world has ever known. And this phrase, great prosperity, we often hear this now tied in with China. Okay, China is experiencing great prosperity through this time when all the manufacturing had gone to China. So again, this great prosperity kind of shifted, and it's how they say, wealth doesn't die; it merely transfers. So we've seen prosperity transfer. This is why we say west to east. Okay. The American Gross National Product, or GNP, a measure of all goods and services produced by a country's or citizens, increased from 200,000 million in 1940 to more than 500,000 million in 1960 to nearly $1 trillion by 1970. So it was growing. It was growing. Times were good. Thanks to increases in productivity, the American standard of living had doubled between 1945 and 1970. With just 6% of the world's population, the US enjoyed 40% of the world's wealth. So we had just 6% of the population at the time, 40% of the world's wealth. Okay. And then troubling signs began to emerge in the late 1960s. Maybe one of them was me. I was born in the late 1960s. So there you go. Unemployment rose by 33% between 1968 and 1970, while the consumer price index went up by 11%. Now, at the same time, real wages began to stagnate. Simultaneous inflation and stagnation, nicknamed stagflation, puzzled economic analysts usually when wages fell, prices fell. And when wages increased, prices increased. Okay. But not in the 1970s. And as a result, Americans had less purchasing power, and increasingly expensive American exports were at a disadvantage in the international market. By 1971, the US experienced its first unfavorable international trade balance since 1893. So, what caused this slump? The massive cost of the Vietnam War and the expansion of social programs at home without commensurate taxes increases, or without tax increases, helped to drive inflation, the price of goods and services. So I'll stop here for a bit. How long has the US been at war? Some 20 years or so. I mean, we can even go back to the 90s, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, all of these things. The first Gulf War, we can go back to the 90s. Social programs have continued to expand without taxation to pay for social programs. Politicians have elected, in order to get elected, to push debt out to future generations. And one of you had just mentioned this. Where, guess what? It's 50 years later, and the generations living today are going to be the generations to pay for failed politicians and their policies, and they're kicking their can down the road to which now they're probably on a dead end street with not many more places to kick that can. So let me take a look at a few comments here. Vincent chiming in. Okay, economic fundamentals will stand the test of time. Example, spending more than you earn, you'll be in deficit, or money printing leads to inflation. Failing to understand, it dooms us to repeat history. Exactly. And this is why when I was looking at, what went on in the 70s, it's just the names that changed, but pretty much everything else stayed the same. Okay, so let's move on a bit. Let's continue on. So, and as far as that oil embargo goes, I mean, the U.S. kind of embargoed themselves. Europe as well. I mean, they don't take oil or energy from Russia via sanctions on Russia, and but they're going to sorely need it. Europe is going to sorely need that oil when it comes to winter, which is why it's going to be interesting to see. I'm going to guess a realignment in Europe. Countries are going to have to take care of the needs of their own citizens before the needs of a pact, so to speak. And U.S. Going to feel it as well. I think some strategic oil reserves were released, but how much can you release? I mean, it was released to hopefully try and bring down the price of oil, price of fuel, but it's not going to be a permanent thing. I mean, I think we're going to see that go back up. So anyway, we're kind of embargoing ourselves. We're helping these countries to hurt us, to hurt the West, to hurt the U.S. I mean, they don't really have to do anything but continue on. So anyway, let me continue on before I get lost in all of this. So back to the 1970s. US manufacturing, especially automotive manufacturing, had become less competitive over time compared to efficient overseas rivals, particularly in Germany and Japan. More and more American jobs were in the service sector, which had lower wages and fewer benefits than these manufacturing jobs. Remember back then in the 70s, at least here in Hawaii, big movement for cars from Japan. The Datsun. Remember, before Nissan, there was the Datsun. I know because we had Datsuns. We saw Toyotas, we saw Hondas, we saw all these cars starting to come in from Asia, from Japan. So I think a lot of us, a few of us anyway, may remember that. So let me move on here, or let me stop anyway. So is this where the U.S. is once again today? I mean, manufacturing down, service sector jobs up. I think we saw that with the pandemic. We saw that with the bottleneck where manufacturing types of jobs, they couldn't go to work. We had these bottlenecks going on. But bigger than that, we saw service sector jobs really, really take a hit. I mean, restaurants, nightclubs, whatever it was, uh, you didn't see service sector jobs really doing too well. And that's because most of the jobs in the US are already service sector jobs. So let me move on here a bit. Carrie Ellen Wilder, interesting comment. Germany is committing suicide this winter. If anybody in Germany is here, go ahead and comment on that, because from what we see, as far as what the news tells us anyway, Germany is actually tightening up, which could look like it may hurt their own people. I mean, I think in southern Germany they're tightening up on hot water usage. I think a few other things as well. So go ahead and chime in, especially if you're from Germany and you see this. Um, okay, what else is out there? Rod, it's a good point here. Germany is going to have to cozy up to France for some of their excess nuclear power. Uh, that is true, but I understand France is having a hard time as well with their nuclear reactors, because I think the water levels are low. The rivers that they use to cool off the nuclear towers the water levels are low. I think I read a few articles on that. So even that is working against a lot of us here. So I mean, what can you say at this point, right? I mean, countries are going to have to they're going to have to realign to get the resources that they need, fortunately or unfortunately. Okay, so now individuals born or on the tail end of the baby boom found themselves competing in a very crowded labor market, especially as more women and immigrants entered the workforce. Remember, back in the 70s, you didn't have as much immigration. A lot of women still worked at home, or still stayed home, my mother included. She was basically a housekeeper. So a lot of, at the time anyway, that's what the situation was. And again, is this not where the U.S. is once again today? Where as things moved on, we saw more immigration moving in and helping out the workforce, doing the jobs that needed to be done. And then we saw women entering the workforce. They wanted to establish careers. A lot of households just needed more money. So this is where we are today, and it's not uncommon. Even if that husband and wife, besides just two jobs, they may have three, they may have four. Um, it's getting financially pretty tight in the home. And then we saw the oil embargo in 71. Richard Nixon attempted to remedy inflation by imposing a 90-day wage and price freeze. But at the same time, he attempted to boost American exports by taking the dollar off the gold standard, devaluing the currency. So that was the way that they devalued the dollar. They just delinked it from gold, temporarily closing that gold window. Now, these measures resulted in a short term improvement, just long enough for Nixon to get reelected back in 72, but did nothing to address the tangled roots of the problem. Kind of sounds like today, this Inflation Reduction Act, where they're going to throw more money in there, spend more money. It's nice for the voters to hear. They hear that their government is going to help them by throwing more money at things and hopefully creating jobs or whatever it may be. The truth is, it's just adding more to inflation. These politicians will get reelected, and short term improvement perhaps, but long term may not do anything, just as we saw back in the 70s. And then the energy crisis hit in October 73. The US, they supported Israel after a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria in the Yom Kippur War. Now, the oil-rich nations of the Middle East, already angry with the US for devaluing the dollar, the currency used to purchase oil, determined to exact their revenge with an oil embargo. All this money printing QE, it's devaluing the dollar. So again, the oil rich nations were angry with the US for devaluing the dollar. Today, pretty much the world is angry with the US for devaluing the dollar. And on top of that, now raising rates. Same thing. These same things are all happening again. But back then, led by Saudi Arabia, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, announced an oil shipping embargo against the US as well as Israel's European allies. Supply shock, energy shock, we're seeing these same things again. And in fact, you could probably go ahead and replace Saudi Arabia with Russia. Okay, you can go ahead and replace Saudi Arabia with Russia. And you more or less have the same situation again today. Same situation here. Now, let me throw this out there. With all that's happening again out there, Ukraine, Russia, China, Taiwan, and the US, is it a possibility there can or could be another shipping embargo, they'll call it, against the US or the West, where this embargo may involve not only energy, food, but also everyday household items and tech that we now need. So this is going to be even greater than what it was back then. So the effects back then were immediate and dire. The price of oil shot up to 11.65 a barrel, an increase of 387%. Lines miles long formed at the gas stations, and some of you may remember this. United States consumed one-third of the world's oil, and its citizens quickly discovered just how much of daily life depended on cheap oil. And as oil rises, everything else rises as well. Why? Because oil, in some way, shape, or form, petroleum is used in almost every product that we have, whether it be the plastics, the fertilizers, whatever it may be. When oil goes up, almost everything else goes up as well. So families living in far-flung suburbs depended on automobiles to get everywhere. Okay. Even after the embargo ended in March of 74, prices for oil remained at about 33% higher than they had been before the crisis. And this goes back to the word transitory. The Fed was using the word transitory, and a lot of people had said what it may mean is inflation will go up. Let's say it goes up from 3% to 12%, and then it's going to level off. It's going to stop. And we may never come back down from that 12%. But that was how they were trying to use the word transitory, where, it's going to go up a bit, but then it'll stop. Thing is, it'll stop and it may not come back down. And again, that puts us all in a harder position than we were before. Keep that in mind. At the end of the post-war economic boom, stagflation and the oil embargo both seem to suggest that the American golden age that had followed on the heels of World War II was at an end. The first Vietnam and then Middle East had revealed the limits of US power abroad. Okay, all right. Back to today, endless wars. And now the Middle East, Russia, China, the BRICS are revealing the limits to US power abroad. And not just the limits of the nation, but also the limits and disdain of the nation's currency. Nothing new under the sun. These same things keep happening over and over and over again. The complex forces which led to the downturn of the 1970s have continued to shape the American economy, particularly globalization, international dependence or interdependence on business and culture, which has accelerated as information technology has made communication and coordination easier. For example, many companies have moved manufacturing jobs out of the US in order to save on labor costs. And today, almost 80% of all American jobs, as mentioned before, are now in the service industry. Manufacturing industry, it's not as large as it once was. We've turned into a service sector industry. And since the oil embargo, the US has also worked to reduce its dependence on foreign oil through a variety of means, including reducing energy usage, improving vehicle fuel efficiency, investing in renewable energy, and increasing domestic oil production. And we've even gone now into green initiatives. Now, it should be noted, though, that in November of 2019, the US became a net exporter of all oil products, including both refined petroleum products and crude oil. The US was off of depending on oil from the Middle East. They were done. US was done. They had enough oil. They were producing it, refining it themselves. And this was short-lived. After reaching oil independence, the US regulated the oil industry, putting the nation back on oil dependency. All right. The quarter century after World War II was a time of incredible growth in the US, which produced the richest nation in human history, as well as a sense of unbridled optimism about the future. By the 1970s, that chapter of the American adventure, it ended. And it ended. A new, altogether more uncertain era had begun. It just begun. And we all know why. Uh, because perhaps one of those things that happened in 1970 was removing the gold standard. You can see how everything just became a domino effect after that. Dollar can be printed at will. It's essentially being devalued when they do that. Nations across the globe, they're not too happy with it because they're holding U.S. debt for one thing. So again, removal of gold from the gold, removal of the gold standard, sorry, created a domino effect. Really did. Here we are today with energy 50 years of never solving the energy problem, or 50 years later, never solving it, and 50 years of printing money in a debt based monetary system, creating debt. Well, what do we expect? It's going to create debt. America moved from the world's largest creditor nation to the world's largest debtor nation. And I think I can, let me just move forward. I can kind of end that part there. Um, yeah, so 50 years later, we still have the same problem. So that'll more or less wrap up the topic of the day, because I want to see what you folks have to say out here. Um, I just found it interesting how the same things keep happening over and over and over again. John Michael Karma had a 72 Datsun 510. We had a Datsun. I forget the number, but then later on we upgraded from that Datsun to a Datsun B210. So I'm with you. We were still Datsuns before Nissan came along. Let's see what else is out there. Um, let's see. Just want to check with the comments here. Um, okay. Rod Panard, true. Firewood in Germany that used to be 50 euros now costs 800 euros, and chainsaws cannot be gotten anywhere. Is that true? If anyone can confirm, I'd be interested to know that. It's a pretty interesting stat if it's true. Let's see what else is out here. Russia supplies the lion's share of uranium to power the world's nuclear plants. France and USA better be nice to the bear. You know, that in recalling, back in we had a state um anyway, Department of State head who sold 20% of the US's uranium output to Russia during her time. I don't know if you folks remember that, but again, these things are coming back. Maybe money was made back then, but we're going to pay for it now. We're going to pay for it multiples more now in trying to get these things. So that's a good comment. Let me take a look at a few more comments here. Let's see. Excuse me. A lot of great comments here. I'm just trying to go through them and see what I can pull up. Um, okay, so let me just move on to I'll move on to commentary in just a bit. I just want to take a look at a few more comments. Good humor, man. That's a great point. Military runs on oil. Absolutely. We are the ones that will be doing without. It's a great point there. I think there was back in World War II, I think it was, U.S. had a shortage of rubber, and they really, really had to, they really had to get Malaysia's help as far as rubber for the tires on the Jeeps and things like that. So military does run on oil. They will be the first to have it and to use it. You and I, we're going to be at the back of the line as always. That's a great point there. See what else is out here. Okay, tell you what, let me just go into the commentary here. The world has seen stagflation. It's not nice. It's not pretty, and we are full speed ahead going into it again. I have two words for us: silver and gold. They've gone through stagflation, and well, this is what they did. Let me show you what they did during that stagflation. During that stagflation period of the 70s, silver went from about $5 an ounce to 50. Okay. Gold went from about $200 an ounce to about 800 an ounce. So during stagflation of the 70s, what we saw, silver went up some 10 times. 10 times. Gold went up 4 times. So today, if you just use those numbers, $20 an ounce. Silver is looking to be above 200. Gold, 4 times from where we're at. We're going to be at 5, 6, 7,000 around there. So those are some good numbers. Let me wrap up the commentary part here. So we see how or what gold and silver does during these times. It stores your wealth. It even increases uh, because fiat currencies they start to decrease. They start to devalue. We see gold and silver go up. So 10 times, 4 times, whatever it may be. Um, I think Peter Schiff has even used the number $1 a few times for silver. If you go a little bit back from the 70s, from $1 it went to 50. So you can imagine if you went 50 times more from where you are today 50 times more. I think, it's quite a bit. Uh, it may not be good times, but the point being, at least you did what you could to protect your family and position yourself in this wealth transfer to where you may come out ahead on the other side. So let me take a look at a few comments here. Casey Willis, Federal Reserve. It's a hard comment. Federal Reserve is the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. You know what? I'm not going to debate that. I think it really just depends how you look at it. They certainly haven't been helping. I think they've been making things worse. So I'm not gonna argue that. Joseph, that's silver to the moon and beyond. Could be. I'm confident with it. Seeing what happened in the 70s and then knowing where we are now and what's surely looks like it's going to be happening, I'm pretty confident with gold and silver doing its job to protect us, protect our wealth. I'm pretty confident with that. Let's see who gave us. Um, let's see what else is out here. Let's see. Rod Panhard, Japanese cars were fantastic when they were made in Japan. Now they are assembled elsewhere, not so much. Yeah, again, I remember those times. I mean, the whole rage was to get an economic car. The U.S. was still building station wagons and all of these things, and then here came the Japan smaller size sedan, mid-size sedan. Fuel was really good. A lot of people moved into it, and you know what the sad thing is? If you remember after the 70s when we went back into the 80s, 90s, what happened? We went right back to making all these huge suburban types of vehicles as if we didn't learn our lesson. So we went from those smaller fuel efficient cars to the bigger suburbans. We went to the minivans. Sorry guys, you may have had those minivans, but we went back to bigger vehicles. And fuel efficiency economy, although a bit better than before, wasn't as good. So as the Japanese cars anyway. So I don't know if we truly learned our lesson. We went right back to it. So we'll see what happens out here. A few more comments and then we'll head out. Um, Ernest Blackmore, that's a good point. The Navy runs on uranium. A lot of the aircraft carriers nowadays and other ships, they are nuclear fueled. So that's a great point there. Maybe we haven't thought of that. It's a good point. Let's see what else is out there. Um, electric F-16s. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Okay, let me just get one more comment here, and then we'll close up shop. Now that is a good question. Will they outlaw our gold and silver? I can't give you a definite yes or no. U.S. does have a history of confiscating. That may not be the right word. They need the gold. They took the gold and they needed it to kind of revalue gold to work with the dollar in some ways. But you know, would they confiscate it again? It's hard to say. They already did once. Silver, they never really touched it. So, well, prior anyway, they kind of removed silver from the monetary standard. So they still needed to remove gold somehow. So they removed it from people's hands. But I don't think people will give it up because when fiat starts really getting into trouble, and you have assets, say like a home, and you need to sell your home because you need money because your assets are all in debt related financial instruments, let's say like a dollar. You're not going to want to sell your home for the dollar. You're going to be looking for something that is a store of wealth. So you may be looking to sell a home or business, whatever it is, to get your hands on some gold and silver. And a lot of you guys out there, you have the gold and silver. So you're putting yourself in a position that you can definitely put yourself ahead. Um, generationally, I'm going to say generationally, you can position yourself to be in a much, much better place. Will they confiscate it? They may not. I'm not sure. Will they try? They may. But the thing is, people know money. After this happens, after the whole fiat, really the current monetary system really starts to unravel, people are going to be looking for things like silver and gold, things that they knew to be money historically. They'll be looking for them again. So hang on tight. Dollar cost average. Get more if you can. Never mind what the spot price may say, because I don't think that's really the true price of gold and silver. That's the paper price, not the physical price. So always keep that in mind. Always keep that in mind. So anyway, I've kind of rambled on and on here, maybe too much. But let me just take a look here. Um, okay, uranium is good. A lot of people have been saying uranium. But okay, so we'll wrap it up. Um, nothing new under the sun, guys. I mean, you can be pretty sure if it happened before, it may happen again. If history doesn't repeat, it surely rhymes. That's for sure. So do what you can, protect yourself, your family, understand what gold and silver do. If you're new to trying to understand what gold and silver do, shoot us an email, sales@silverbullion.com.sg. We'll walk you through it and help explain what it does, and probably more importantly, systemic wealth protection. Okay, you've worked hard for what you have. So again, storm is coming. That's for sure. We know it. As I say, some of you have yachts. Some of us, like me, we just got a canoe here, but we're in the same storm together. We're going to get through this together. I think one of the first things we have to understand is what governments are doing, what central banks are doing, and then we'll know what we need to do. And pretty much we already know that things like silver and gold will help us. So as always, you guys take care of each other. Be a blessing, not a burden. Saddle up for what's coming ahead, and silver up as well. I'll see you guys next week.